There comes a time in every researcher's life when someone casually says to them, "You should submit to that conference." And just like that, you're faced with writing a conference abstract. And it often has to be written when you are juggling 50 other things. And yet somehow, this tiny piece of writing can feel more overwhelming, more difficult, more challenging than an entire chapter in your thesis. So if you've been staring at a blank screen, thinking, how do I fit my messy, complicated research into 250 words? Don't worry, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley, and I am here to help you get your PhD finished and to realise that there is no big secret to getting that done. It is simply a process of one tiny step and another tiny step and another tiny step. And I'm here to help you figure out what that looks like for you. So if presenting at a conference is one of the steps that you want to take quite soon, let's get into it. So what is a conference abstract, really? A conference abstract is like a movie trailer for your research. It's a short, snappy summary that tells the organisers what your research is about, why it matters, and what you'll be talking about in your presentation or paper. And it's not just a summary, it's also a pitch. You are trying to persuade someone to give you a slot on the conference programme. You want them to read your abstract and think, yes, we want this person at our event. And just like a good movie trailer, your abstract needs to be engaging, it needs to be clear, and it needs to give people enough information to pique their curiosity and their interest without overwhelming them. Many PhD students ask me whether they can still submit to conferences if they haven't finished their research yet. They think they've got to complete their entire PhD before they can start submitting abstracts. And I would say that's not the case. Lots of people worry that they can't submit an abstract because their research isn't finished yet. And I would say to that, well, that's true. Your entire PhD isn't finished yet, but phases of it are, stages of it are. And you've got something valuable to say about that. You've got a good contribution to bring to the table. Lots of conferences welcome work in progress papers, especially those aimed at early career researchers and those that are PhD student friendly. And if you're collecting data or you're in the early stages of your analysis, why not look back to some of the earlier phases of your PhD and see if you can develop something from that? Your aims, your questions, your theoretical approach. You're not expected to have everything all wrapped up. Maybe you want to highlight something that you've developed around the literature. Maybe you've got your own little framework, your own way of looking at the literature, which is a way of looking at the literature that you've not seen done before. You've developed it specifically for you. That might be helpful for other people too. Maybe you've made the literature simpler or more straightforward to understand. There's something about the way you've made sense of it that's just easier, and that is worth sharing. Maybe there's a methodological dilemma you're having. That's worth sharing. Maybe you figured out a system or a whole new way of recruiting participants. Other researchers could benefit from that. That is worth sharing. And don't overstretch yourself. Don't promise to deliver on something that you haven't got done yet. So don't say that your conference paper is going to be all about the themes you found in your analysis when you haven't even done that analysis yet. Having a goal, having a milestone can be helpful, okay? But also it can introduce a new pressure that wasn't there before. So please avoid doing anything like that. Focus on drawing on the work you've already done, not the work that you're hopeful you're going to get done in a particular period of time. Before we move on to the next thing, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you been to an academic conference yet? Are you planning on going to one? If you're a bit hesitant, what are you worried about? If you've been to tons and tons of conferences, if you are a seasoned conference pro, can you also please share in the comments some tips for people going to their first conference? What do you wish someone would have told you before you went? Let's share some insights down there in the comments. Get typing. Now, here is the structure behind most successful abstracts. Now, conference abstracts are going to vary a bit depending on the event, depending on the discipline, depending on the way of doing stuff within that discipline. But in general, a good abstract will have these 5 key ingredients, starting with your topic and context. This is your chance to let the reader know what you're looking at and why it matters. Why is it interesting? Why is it important? So start with a clear, accessible statement. Because the people who are reading through the conference abstracts, yes, they are experts in your discipline, in your field, but they're not experts in your specific piece of research, okay? So you need to give them a bit of context and do so in a way that is jargon-free and accessible. For example, this paper explores how working class students navigate belonging in elite university spaces, a topic that has received increased attention in recent years as institutions seek to widen participation but struggle to address deeper cultural inequalities. So right away we know the topic and we know the broader issue it relates to. Next up, the research questions or aims. What is it that you're trying to find out or better understand? Here's an example. The research investigates how students from working class backgrounds make sense of their experiences of class, identity, and cultural difference within the university setting. Keep it sharp, keep it specific. Don't try to cram your entire thesis in here. You just need to spotlight the bit that you're talking about. Next up, say something about your conceptual and/or theoretical framing. This can be a line or two, maximum. Just enough to signal the intellectual grounding of your work, without going full on academic jargon. For example, the analysis is informed by Bourdieu's concepts of habitus and cultural capital, with particular attention to how these play out in everyday university life. Now, if you're a bit unsure as to whether the person reading your abstract is going to know about that theory, give a little bit more detail, like a tiny bit. So Bourdieu's work on class and education. Next up, outlining your method or approach. Even if your research is still in progress, say something about how you're doing it. What kind of data are you working with? What kind of approach are you going to take to analysing it? For example, data was collected through in-depth interviews with 20 undergraduate students and is currently being analysed thematically. Don't worry about going into detail. This isn't your methodology chapter. Just give enough detail to show that your work is grounded and coherent. Lastly, we're looking at the focus of your talk or the takeaway. What is it that people are going to go away with? Finish strong by letting the reader know what your presentation will actually do. And this is the part that often gets missed, but it is so helpful for reviewers in terms of figuring out what your contribution to this conference is going to be. Here's an example. This paper will explore how students negotiate the tension between fitting in and staying true to their backgrounds, and argue that universities need to engage more meaningfully with the cultural dimensions of class inclusion. And if you don't have findings yet, you can just say what your talk is going to focus on. A debate, an emerging theme, a conceptual issue. Just make sure that the organisers know what to expect. And here are some abstract writing tips to keep you sane. Check the word limit and stick to it. If the maximum is 250 words, that is the maximum. Don't write any more than that. Read the call for papers really carefully as well. So many people don't do this, and it's easy to forget that this isn't just about getting your research accepted for a conference. It is about looking at what that conference is trying to do. What is the topic? What is the theme? What is the issue that the conference organisers have identified that they want to bring people together around? It might be that your research doesn't quite fit with that. And that's fine. You can just go and look for another conference. Don't try and kind of shoehorn your research into a conference that really isn't your jam. And ensure that you tailor the style of your writing. So as PhD researchers, you're writing for different audiences all the time. So you're writing your thesis, and the audience there are your examiners. You might be designing a conference poster, and your audience there are attendees at the conference who just want to have a quick breakdown of your research. The audience who are going to be coming to an actual paper presentation are going to have different needs and different requirements. So in your abstract, you need to communicate what it is that you're going to share with them. And the way in which you do that will be slightly different from the way in which you've written a thesis chapter, or the way in which you might have designed a poster, or the way in which you've had a discussion with fellow PhD students. And a really good tip to ensure that you're doing that right, that you're doing that well, is to go back and look at last year's conference, okay? Go onto the conference website, look at the records and the abstracts from the last year's conference, and you'll be able to see where those abstracts are landing, the level of detail in them. You'll be able to see the tone in which they're being presented, and you're able then to adapt your tone to that. Now, all of that is probably going to take a bit of time, but it is time well spent because it's going to help you identify the conferences that you are truly aligned with. And when you do make the decision that you're going to put an abstract in, it's going to enhance the chances of that abstract being accepted because you will have crafted that abstract to that particular event. What if your abstract gets rejected? It happens to everyone. Even the big deal rock star, superstar researchers get conference abstracts rejected all the time. And this is not a sign that your research is bad, okay? It is not a reflection of the value of your work or the value of you as a researcher. Sometimes it's about fit, it's about timing, it's about space. So if it happens, don't take it personally. Just use it as a reason to polish that abstract and send it somewhere else. Also, some conferences are wildly competitive. They're like the cool kids' party that everybody wants to go to. Others are a bit more welcoming and they're more accommodating of conference first-timers. So choose wisely based on the stage of research that you're at and how confident you feel in that conference environment. And always try and find someone who's been to that conference before. So try and find a colleague or a peer or a supervisor who went last year or the year before, who can tell you what that conference is all about and whether it's your thing. And writing a conference abstract, it can feel a little bit like trying to summarise War and Peace in a WhatsApp, but it gets easier with practice. Now, are you a massive introvert who kind of hates the idea of going to a conference? Yep, me too. There's a video popping up on your screen right now that you will definitely find helpful if you're not into the whole people-y conference thing. It will help you get into a frame of mind that makes that conference experience a little bit less painful, and actually, you might end up enjoying it. So go and check that out. I'll see you in there.